great experience here. So, gentlemen, we'll start down at the end. If you'll introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
I'm Robert Millar.
Can you guys hear me? I'm Robert Millar. I am at the St. Andrews Golf Club in Hastings, New York. I've been there for a number of years and was asked to join this panel to discuss some of the technologies that we started using.
Robert Alonzi, Fenway Golf Club, and been there for 19 years, and excited to talk with you guys today.
Jeff Scott, Tamarack Country Club. Really good with technology.
So, yeah, Jeff Scott, Tamarack Country Club. Been there way too long, 30 years. That's why I use a lot of robotics.
So the first part of having a panel is to establish a lot of credibility, and we're going to focus on technology today. So it's wonderful to have these gentlemen with great experience, and they're all using some sort of technology that you might find intimidating, right? Autonomous equipment, AI is a buzzword we talk about a lot. Even things like drone sprayers. So Robert, we'll start with you, and then I really want to emphasize, please ask questions, right? This is not meant to just be my life experience, these gentlemen's life experience. Please ask questions, and I'll fill in where we need it. But Robert, we'll start with you down at the end of St. Andrews. How have you kind of used some of the latest technology, autonomous equipment, et cetera, successfully at your facility?
So
We're new to the game. We just started using them last summer, fall area. I've been researching it for the last 3 years, probably 4 years. Did not want to be the first initial person to use it. Wanted to get trends from other neighbors. But we started using autonomous mowers last year. We started off with one machine. We demoed a couple. Started off with one machine. Saw it useful to spread our labor efficiency in other areas, why these machines worked throughout the golf course. We also started to use drones at the end of the year, or throughout the year last year for chemical applications, some severe rock outcroppings. Glad I started the trend. Wish I started a little earlier. Like I said, I didn't want to be the first person, but glad we started, and it has been efficient for us. We are utilizing, we're putting labor into different areas. We're reducing some costs in certain areas, especially with the drone spraying, and we'll get more into that as we move on through the discussion.
Wonderful. Speaking of the autonomous equipment, how many do you have on property now, and which ones are you using?
So we started last year with the one Husqvarna, the smaller one. It did 4 or 5 green surrounds for us right in our shop. It took a while to set up and get to learn the machine. There was a learning curve to it. But once it started, the members loved it. They started naming it Robbie after me. They call it Robbie the Robot. So at the end of the year, we made a decision by Thanksgiving to purchase 3 more. So this year, we're going to have 4 out in the course. And there's newer technology coming with fairway mowers and other stuff. We're not there yet, but we're starting just with rough mowing and trying to expand our management and more accurately manage stuff. And we are now going to have 4 this year. I could see us having 10 or 12 by the end of going into 2027, after 2026.
I think an important thing that you hit on is certainly reallocating labor, not replacing labor, right? There's a question right over here. Oh, okay. All right, Robert, now on to you. How are you using this sort of technology at your club?
So I started a little differently. For Father's Day, I bought myself a drone for my house. It was easy to tell who the superintendent in the neighborhood was, because it was by far the worst, the worst property in the neighborhood, right? So, so I buy this thing, and within a week or two, I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. Wife's off my back, lawn looks great, right? And I start thinking, what can we do at Fenway to introduce these things? And first I was thinking like clubhouse lawn, like just general area where where a lot of traffic goes by. And one of our kind of issues at Fenway is our driving range. It's a 6-acre field, and on Thursdays it opens late because we have to, do the divots, mow the field, targets, so on and so forth. So we did a long-term demo with an autonomous machine, and within a week, you could tell this was gonna really work out for us. And for this season, it will be maintained autonomously. And our goal is not to open the range now 2 or 3 hours after the course opens. That it will open, every day like it would every day, right? So then Mr. Scott, sends our text group a video of these mountain climbing mowers. So, so now we do a long-term demo with that. We have one machine that did 3 green surrounds and, worked out great. And, for this season, we're going with, we're starting with 6 machines. And, we're excited. But my Greens chairman, Mark, over here, Mr. Koretsky, when I was having this conversation with him, he asked, so, are we getting rid of people? And my answer was, we're not getting rid of people, we're reallocating labor. We're gonna take the guy who was spending 3 hours mowing the driving range, and he's gonna do something else. So the list of things, the things that are down deep in the list, now we can move up and give more attention to.
I wasn't trying to get rid of people, by the way.
No, I hear.
I want to throw sort of the balance.
Yes.
It's going to happen.
It's the reallocation.
Well, but also, you want to think about this equipment's more expensive, right, typically. And where's the curve in
Right.
terms of the savings? Because ultimately, we all want to have the very best playability for the golf course.
That's right.
And I don't care how we get there, people, machines.
Right.
As long as it's within the budget that we set, right? So-
Exactly.
I think that's a great point about improving, playing quality, et cetera. Jeff, you seem to be a pioneer in this area, and your text thread may have prompted others to do this. What have you learned through your experience with this equipment?
So Tamarack's goal up front was to get started, if for no other reason, to acclimate the membership to the use of robotics. So that as they saw it out there, they knew they weren't going to get run over, their ball wasn't going to get destroyed, it wasn't going to interfere with play. So that started off a couple of years ago. Our fleet now is inclusive of 19 machines. A demo, but we'll own that this spring. So we started off in the rough with 3 of the bigger units for Husqvarna platform. We now have 15 of the 535 all-wheel drive, which are the smaller units that do quite well on banks. So for those of you who have played Tamarack, our green platforms are 20, 30 feet above sand. So our banks average 30, 35 degree, and we've got 12 acres of that. So you can imagine the handwork. So anything to help us in that respect, even if it doesn't do it 100%, we found to be quite useful. So with 15 machines, we essentially can do, I would say, 80% of those steep banks on all 18 green platforms. But again, I think it's important to understand that it's not going to go away, right? AI, robotics, it's not going to go away. So again, to get started in some respect and get the membership acclimated and accustomed to seeing these machines out there is essential. So we're at the point now where it's getting to some value issues. The price point, can you reduce labor? This is the first summer we've done that. We're using 4 less summer help guys based on the amount of robotics that we have. Yes, we have more labor to do other things, but the price point comes into play because Tamaracks already invested quite a bit of money with 18, 19 machines, right? So now we get into fairway robotics, that's where it gets interesting. Fairway robotics are not cheap, and we cut with triplexes, and we have 35 acres of fairway. So we're out there with 6, 7 triplexes. So you start going full robotic on fairways, then you get into the issue of price point, which is where the club's at now. So how do you justify that? Is it, how much extra labor, how many extra projects, how much detail work can you justify by spending quite a bit of money on fairway robotics? So you reach a point, and that's the point I'm trying to make here, where you've really got to take certain aspects of it slow and focus on where you think the true labor savings are and justify it, right? I think that's the best point to get across at this point, right now.
Well, I certainly think it's a great strategy. Any questions while we, go ahead.
Didn't you also notice like a big degree in playability because the banks had gotten deteriorated over the years and balls would hang up and nobody could walk on those banks? And now with the restoration and the robotics working, that doesn't happen as much or at all anymore?
Yeah, well,
Because it's not a once a week cut, is what I'm getting at.
yeah, so here, a quick story. So we were 100% on full rough cutting with those 3 big Sierras, Dos Equipos last summer. Again, an easy sale, did a tremendous job. The board at the end of the season, when we sort of were summarizing our successes and our challenges, the first thing that came up was, if any improvement was shown in 2025, it was the quality of the rough. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even though we have only 25 acres of fairway and we're a landlocked golf course, we have a lot of fairway acreage, but it's offset by a small amount of rough acreage, right? So it's easy for us to cut 25 acres, and they were getting cut 2-3 times a week. So the density, the lightweight nature of it, really showed itself.
The quality you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell.
Yeah.
Just a follow-up, I guess, to that. So you notice you're mowing rough more often now than you were before with robotics versus?
Yeah, they're 24/7. So they're cut 4 or 5 hours depending on the terrain, and they come back and charge, and they go out on their own, based on program. So we did not stop. We just let them cut. They would finish as a program section, and they would go right back out and start it again.
Which is an interesting point to make, is for golfers who complain about, rough height, and they want to talk about rough height, it is often more of a frequency of cut than it is a height of cut issue. So now you're getting more consistent playability.
Yeah, but it's not like the Tuesday height of cut
Correct.
versus Sunday. It's all the same.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
Our one machine that did these 4 or 5 green surrounds, it probably cut constantly, it probably cut them 3 times a week. And it just stayed at that 2 1/4 height cut for the entire time.
We're finally not breaking the 1/3 rule anymore.
Correct. It's definitely fine to
You're
cut.
also, you're also finding that the area is a lot denser, right? Because you're mowing it 2, 3, 4
Yeah, it's like
times.
a little bonzo.
Right, yeah.
We've got a question right here.
Are all 3 of you guys operating Husqvarnas for your surrounds and drainage?
So for me, it's 6 it's going to be for this season, 6 Husqvarnas and 1 Toro machine. So Jeff said he uses the Husqvarna platform. That is kind of something to think about going forward, right? I committed to the Toro machine because it was 40-inch and it could do 13 acres in a 24-hour period. But if I had my druthers, I would stick with 1 platform. It's just easier than having to bounce around through, different operating systems, if you will.
I'm Husqvarna also. And this year we'll have, we started with 1 small one last year. I'm getting a Seor this year. That's going to do our driving range, which is about 6 acres of rough, 7 acres of rough, and also be able to accomplish my first and second hole, which are next to it, and cut that rough also. And I'm hoping I can cut it 2 to 3 times a week. We do have to be mindful of irrigation, dew patterns, because there are some challenges with that stuff.
I think, going back to the question with Rob over at St. Andrews is, one, eventually there'll be labor cost savings, right? But I think the big question which we're talking about is the quality of the golf course, right? Because I don't think our members are ever happy enough with quality, right? That when we reach that quality level to say, how good can we make this golf course, and then say labor cuts, right? So I think we have a lot of quality things that we could bring as far as the condition of the golf course, the rough, improving the rough by cutting it more often. I think we have a lot more space to find there first before we find the diminishing returns of automation. At least that's the way I'm approaching it, is not to cut the cost, but to improve quality, then look for cost savings down the road.
Especially with the spring and fall seasons when you have that, exponential growth at times, and it's just cut. You're not getting complaints on Friday that the rough's too high around it, or you didn't cut, or the rough didn't cut Monday or Tuesday morning.
Question right here, sir.
I have a couple of questions. One is just quick, are you buying them or leasing them?
We are strictly leasing. And the main point of that is, we all see how quickly tech is changing. Who knows what 4 years will bring? It's undefinable. So why lock in, sort of thing.
Are you guys
We purchased ours.
purchased?
Yeah.
We're a combination of both.
And how does I imagine that from a maintenance perspective, one of these things breaks, you're kind of in good shape because the whole rest of the fleet is there versus you lose a mower, you're unable to mow like a huge percentage of the golf course. But how are they from a maintenance perspective? Do they break down? Do you have to take them out of service or do stuff to?
We saw one issue this fall. Where the actual blade holder came off, and the machine stops itself. It alerts you when it has a problem. The machines also sometimes get stuck or flip over, depending on their entry path on the turtle. Yeah, it looks like an upside down turtle. But we get alerts on our phones. It's constant monitor and having somebody. You have to change the blades a couple times a week.
A couple times a week?
They're small blades. They're not that hard. Not about once a week. Would you say, or 2 weeks?
We're doing it every 2 weeks.
Yeah, we especially when you get to the leaf debris in the fall, we had to stop using it once. We had to get stuck on pine cones at the end of the year when the debris was coming down. So there were.
But so the blades wear out and those are constantly.
They're not that expensive. They're easy removed, but we I'll have a better understanding of how many times we have to replace this year.
Yeah, they're razor blades. It's a disc that holds, I think, 7 or 8 razor blades that we change every 2 weeks.
So there's no major expense there?
No.
Have you ever had one like that you had to take out of service altogether? Or?
Yeah. So listen, they're not maintenance free by any means, and they're not maintenance heavy, but they're not maintenance free. And we learned as we went through last summer, having the first year behind us, that it's like they're plastic, and they have a big battery on them, and they're smart, and that's it. So you got to tighten up nuts and bolts. You got to turn them over and clean them out. It just becomes part of a program for the maintenance staff. Again, it's not a lot, but by all means, you just don't let it go and hope for the best. There's some work.
Do you keep spares?
No, other than the blades. They're easily repairable. We've had a situation where one of the smaller ones got under a vehicle. The guy was changing the cups on the green. He wasn't aware of it. It just found its way underneath there versus bouncing off of it, and he backed over it. That was a fun conversation. Wasn't his fault, but they are easily repaired.
And sorry, one more. Have you had any stolen? Have you had anything stolen?
We don't have an issue with that. We're kind of landlocked up in northern Greenwich, so no. But it's been discussed. So remember that every machine has its own charging pad, and we can get into the implications of all of that. So yeah, you gotta be careful where you put your stuff if you were surrounded and you have an active neighborhood, right?
Did you eliminate your traditional fleet of park mowers? Do you still have them?
We kept ours. So an example of why, okay, again, we had like a big 5-unit John Deere rideable mower, a couple smaller machines, sidewinders that would help us out. But you know, we have an event, we had an event this past fall, and we wanted the Gorilla Rough out. So we normally cut it 2.5, 3 inches. We made a final cut, we brought all the robotics in, and we let it grow out for 4 to 5 days. So now it gets wet, we have some rain, now it's time to get caught up. The robotics are not gonna do it. They just cannot cut tall grass and get caught up. So we had to, you know, we sent out for that catch-up cut with our traditional rough machines. And then once it was down, you know, the robotics were able to keep up with it. That's another reason why you gotta cut 24/7, for the most part. You cannot let it grow out.
Two questions. Anybody's using on the driving range right now, I'm finding issues with the equipment in golf balls, number one. And then number two, you said you have 16 mowers out there, you have 16 different power supplies out there too, each of them in their own independent charging station.
Yeah, so, you know, you get into some of the infrastructure issues, right? And there are a lot. So when you are going to evaluate your golf course, you really need to think it through. And again, one of them is, okay, well, where are you gonna get your power from? You wanna have your pads located near the area that they're gonna cut, right? Because there's travel time back and forth. So the farther they need to travel to get to that area, the more battery is used up. So your charging pads are located in a perfect world all over the golf course. Fortunately at Tamarack, we have just the way it lays out between a drink house, a pond that's got a bubbler in it with a electrical panel, where a pump house is located, where a pool facility is located, where the maintenance facility is located. It all worked out for us, but we have charging pads everywhere. So you got to think about that.
So Tom, on the driving range, we almost do a clean pick every night anyway, but the random ball won't hurt it. But if the field is littered with balls, you know, it's gonna ding up the blades, you know, it's gonna affect quality of cut, obviously. So for us, what we were doing was we were mowing from 8 o'clock at night to 8 in the morning. And then it can do tennis lawn, it can go in the back near, like where my nursery and stuff is, and finish over there. But, you know, we haven't found an issue with golf balls. And then, you know, kind of thinking forward was, if we did have it out there mowing when people were hitting, like, you know, like Jeff said, these things are plastic, like, you know, how many balls is it gonna take to break the cover or knock out a sensor or something like that? So, you know, that's why we're mowing from 8 to 8.
Use some robot range paper.
We had,
Belongs to the mower.
Right.
That would be a new thing, right?
Yeah.
they make robotic range pickers now too. The range machine also, you can put a ball deflector which pushes the balls to the side. I haven't started using that yet. The power supply, you have to think about where you're gonna put your machine. So we have some flooding issues on a couple holes, and God forbid we have this, you know, multi-$1,000 machine and it gets caught in flood one night.
So I have a question about the charging stations, and, you know, how did you either disguise them, or do golfers push back on the look of added things on the golf course? I know all of you take such pride in clean looking golf courses, and with fewer trees now you can see everywhere. How do you get around that, an added station on the golf course?
So we, again, based on, it was not hard for us, based on where our power was available. So the stuff that really was visible out on the golf course, we have 16 acres of fescue, So for the most part, we would have a transport path into the fescue. So when the fescue was up and running, it kind of deflected, you know, the look of it. And then other areas near our shop, we could actually have them drive into an area behind a row of hedges, let's say, to hide it. But, you know, some of them, we have 4 pads, charging pads near the pump house. Even though it's in fescue, you're gonna see them. We really did not have a lot of problems with the membership though, in terms of that. So it was a non-issue for us.
They've gotten better, because each charging station used to have its own pole, that a machine worked in a 500-yard area. Now they have a single pole that's 4G that runs the whole route. So you'd only have the pad and the robot, which is, you know, this tall.
Yeah, they're low profile.
They're also,
You can make a little doghouse for it, you know.
they're coming out with an antenna this year too, that will be one antenna for the whole property. It comes out, I believe,
The
June.
concern I hear from people is when they don't have power near where they want to be.
They have solar
When
ones.
they do solar, but now you're introducing a panel, you know, so you gotta put just more thought into
Oh, yeah. Oh,
how
yeah.
that looks.
I would agree.
So,
Yeah.
so Fenway, we're doing our locations next to satellite boxes. So we have a lightning horn, it has power, you know, we're gonna plug in there. So, you know, if you have a lightning horn and you have a satellite or a cluster of satellites, you know, what does my mentality is right now is like, what does the robot next to those, you know, those 2 items really matter? Inside a flower bed, you know, things like that where we can, but, when it's in the open, it's gonna be, you know, closer to satellites or things like that.
Trying to tuck it behind the equipment out there.
Next question back here.
How easy or difficult is it to deal with programming, and is it something we handle internally, or is it get assistance from an outside third party?
Initially come in and help you set it up, but it's not that difficult. You can change the map and you can move the machines as long as you have power and charge the stations, so it's not that difficult. But there is a learning curve. And we try to cross-train multiple people on the course because not everybody's, you know, there all the time. So there's an app that you put on your phone, you can actually have several people on the property have the app.
Is it any more or less difficult than setting up like geofencing on the parks?
It's pretty much just like geofencing.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add to that, so again, the mapping becomes crucial the more machines you get. So you get up there 18 machines. So we have one dedicated assistant. Everybody's versed, but he actually knows more about it than I do. And his main role every morning, for the most part, before he helps the other assistants with setup, is to monitor what's going on. So to get back to the mapping question, it's essential that, you know, my recommendation for clubs is it's essential from day one to designate one guy, if not 2. So he's there with the guy from whoever your distributor is from Husqvarna to be with that guy when they do the initial mapping, so that he learns every single trick, you know, and he knows exactly what is going on. So, you know, the distributor's good. He's never there every day. He cannot be there the next day if there were a problem. So, again, it's essential that you have that guy that is really well trained. You know, my guy, Tyler over here. Hi, Tyler. He's my man. You know, he's got the handheld little game controller, so he can map, he can change things, he can create no-go zones when we have a problem based on slope. You have traffic routes that need to get moved. Just remember, these things are going back and forth, particularly the little ones, to a charging pad all day long. They're only cutting for like 2 hours at a time. So you want to change your cutting patterns. You're not going to call up your distributor to have them do that. Right? So there is some setup issues that the clubs need to understand to get ahead of.
Are all these machines electric, or are some of them hybrid, some of them combustion?
All electric.
All electric. Nobody's making the combustion.
Well,
The bigger mowers?
The bigger mowers are either gas or hybrid.
Is there anything coming in the pipeline that would
I'm taking it real slow with Fairway Robotics based on the price and how things are changing. But there's a lot of stuff that's happening that I've heard of that has not yet been released. So we're Charles Banks design. That means that we have very flat bunkers. We have 5.25 acres of sand to rake, which is way above the average around here, design-wise, right? It's just a golf course. So for us, it makes sense to look into robotics for bunker raking, which are out there. So yeah, I mean, you gotta be careful what you lock into, because again, you don't really know what's coming down the road in a very fast way.
So, personally, I was looking at automated fairway mowers through the Toro company. Did a bunch of demos with them. The price point is very high. And I don't know if they know how well it's gonna work or not work. Meaning, can it just leave, my maintenance area, travel to the first hole and get mowing? We have bridges that need to get crossed. There's a lot of uncertainty, and we've slowed down that discussion. That technology is changing very quickly. They say it's backward compatible, but where are you going to be in the queue when things are moving forward? So I think in the near future that's going to be great technology. I'm very hesitant personally to jump in on a purchase like that right now.
There was another machine called the Firefly, and we've seen demos in the area. It's a very expensive machine, but you also have to have an operator transport it. So you have to have the operator go out to transport it. It cuts the fairway for a half hour. They can do something else while it's cutting, possibly rake bunkers or clean sprinkler heads. And then you have to have an operator transport it to the next one. It doesn't transport itself. And those are the bigger machines, and they're in the $150,000 range, if not more.
Do the mowers, what do they do with the clippings? Does it all just get shredded into?
They cut so often that, unless you get behind, it's seldom the clippings.
I could see you get behind after storms, and you'll have to go back to your regular mowers to get that height cut and then start using it again. But by the second or third cut in a row, it'll keep that clipping beam down.
No, it's just a dust.
And these machines, they adjust their height. You can have certain areas at different heights. And they can go down to like almost a fairway height. We tried it on one approach, but it was leaving clippings everywhere. We didn't like it. I don't think the technology's there yet for fairway height.
And then we were told they'll do the climbers will do a 70-degree slope. You actually.
This is a little steep.
Yeah. That's what they
Be careful what say anything else, be careful what you believe.
Like Jeff said earlier, it reduces like that fly mowing in these bunker banks, which is safety issues for guys and just a lot of strictness.
So how steep are you been able to use?
So again, we're like 35%. That's pretty steep. That's a lot different than 70.
No, I know.
So I mean, here's the road. So and Husqvarna's working with me. They're going to make some modifications and double wheel up the back portion of it so there's better traction. But in all honesty, we're not cutting much at night because of the steepness and condensation. So when moisture sets up, I mean, if you're irrigating your greens rounds and it gets slippery, yeah, they fail more often than they hold up. So we are, 6 a.m. once the sun comes up a little bit during the summer, we'll cut until dark, and then we'll bring them in. And it's okay, we're keeping up. Whether or not a new configuration on the machine itself is going to help us so we can cut more at night, it's yet to be seen. But they're not perfect on something as steep as what we have.
But we're the same as you.
Yeah, I mean, we're an exception as you are, and for a normal golf course, in my opinion, it's not going to have the same issues that we do, right? In all fairness.
So you talk about
What is the number experience like for having mowers out on the course or all people?
Yeah, I think the last spring when it all started, let's say, particularly during the Ladies' Day event, there were a lot of concerns. But, you know, the machine is pretty smart, and it will, you know, it will approach somebody and it will stop. It will nudge up against a golf cart and it will stop. Once that sort of psychological safety issue established itself, they kind of thought it was pretty cool to see him out there.
I guess I'm not as worried about the safety issue, as I'm sure Cole was, much as the aesthetic, you have people walking the course. We're very much walking the course.
Yeah.
And having machines out there while you're doing that, I just wonder if there's a member experience issue with that. I think that would be a major reaction.
Yeah, normal play, including weekends, it wasn't an issue. Obviously, when we had an event or an outing that had some significance to it, we park them.
Did you get any comments or questions, and we had it down all this summer for the week?
But we had that down on the lower course or wherever it was, and I think that was kind of an area that people was interested in. I think if you were up near some of our more signature holes, I can see some of our members saying this is not always on. So that's something for us to think about, but.
I think it becomes a talking point though. You know, you're there with your friends or your guests and you're like, you know, what's this thing? Oh, you know, we're using autonomous mowers. Oh, you guys aren't doing that? Like it becomes a talking point and you know, you get used to it and people think it's like cool, right? It's like it's the in thing. Last fall I was in Ohio at Westfield Golf Club and it's a 36-hole facility. One of the 18 uses autonomous machines to mow 85% of the golf course. Fairways, tee surrounds, some tee tops, rough, like everything except for hand-cut approaches and a little bit around the greens. And it took about 3 minutes, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. And you see the machine coming at you, and it's, like Jeff said, it stops. And, you know, you drive away and it starts up again, or it turns around and, you know, there was members out there. I think after you get used to it, you don't even realize that they're there. Kind of like the guy who would be pushing the machine or using the fly mower. You get accustomed to them being there, and you don't, it doesn't register.
And the quietness.
Yeah.
They're very-
And it's a lot more
The
quiet.
comment I get from the member experience when I go to courses and hobbies is you don't hear that big mower revving up.
Right.
It's just quiet. So, yeah, if you don't want to see 2 or 3 robots in your photo of 16 green, I get it.
Right.
But you don't hear that big boom rev up. So it's a better experience because it's a nice quiet experience.
Why does it seem like this guy is following me every time? Every time I'm not here, he's mowing the same grass. I don't get it.
So I certainly think, just like Jeff alluded to, I think starting small, right, starting with 1 or 2 and getting that member feedback, because we've worked with clubs that were comfortable with the smaller units, but not comfortable with some of the larger units, and I think that makes sense when you hear it, right? And I think in this industry, we started, call it 10 years ago, with greens mowers, autonomous greens mowers, and really, that's probably the worst place that any superintendent in this room would want to trust with autonomous equipment. So starting with range pickers or rough mowers. But I want to get to one last thing, and a lot of great questions about autonomous equipment, but Robert, if you can talk about the drone spraying a little bit and sharing that with the group, how you've used that and how it's been agricultural.
Over the last, I'd say 4 years, at our national conference that we go with the golf course superintendents, I've been seeing these booths with drones on, whether it's for mapping, heat maps, stuff like that, which is great technology for us for soil moisture management. And then something caught my eye a couple years ago that I heard about was being able to apply pesticides. For instance, we're a very severe hilly course, elevation course. We have probably almost 400 feet of elevation throughout the course, a lot of rock outcroppings, a lot of hillsides. So one hole, we have one hole has 200 foot of elevation, and we would try to take, these are naturalized areas. We would take a lot of labor to, you know, manage these areas. There is management in naturalized areas, and it's very labor conducive sometimes. So these hillsides, we would have to either backpack. Guy has a 20-pound, 30-pound backpack on his back and go through and spot spray stuff and treat these areas to keep, you know, woodies or noxious weeds like Asian knotweed, mugwort. These are very thick stem weeds when you don't take care of them. And we would probably spend 300 to 400 labor hours throughout the year spraying these areas. Cliff sides, we would spray. We have a couple cliffs that are about 25 feet high on two holes. And the tree labor, just to like remove the poison ivy, the vines from these, you know, rock outcroppings, cliff faces. A lot of money in tree work to do that every 2 years. So we started, last year was the first year I entertained it. We outsourced a spray drone. He came in 3 times. The first day he was there, it probably took about 6 hours to map the course. And that's all geofields, GPSs, also similar to the mowers or the cart systems that we use once it's established. Now, he came in 3 times last year. The reduction in labor that I saw with us having to do these pesticides in this area was probably about 80%. We still had to go in around trees in certain areas, or we had like certain naturalized areas we don't want to spray anything, like for milkweed and pollinators. So we would still go in these areas and spray a little bit last year, but we did 3 applications last year. The native areas look better than we have in several years, and it just reduced our labor. So he's coming back in this year. He's going to do 3 applications again this year. It takes him now approximately 2.5 hours set up and off the property. So he comes in about 5 in the morning, and he's out by 7:30, off to his next job. So it really has been efficient for us. I see a really gain in it. Eventually, what I could see is, you know, us being able to pilot these things ourselves and have the aviator license. They're a little bit bigger machines.
Are you spraying preventatives or you just spot
We were spraying a little bit of preventative in the first initial April spray, and it's all selective weed selections. It's more herbicides that we're using in these areas. I could see one of the issues is that not everything is registered for aerials, the products. And so a lot of these companies are going to go back in and re-register the products for aerials. I could see we have we have a couple tea complexes that we've had sprayers flip off of before in the past. Nobody got hurt, but the machine got hurt. I could see us utilizing it for fungicides eventually for like certain, you know, crazy teas that we have to walk up and get to.
So the gentleman that Robbie used, he visited Fenway this year. Same thing, you know, first time through takes a little bit more time, and then after that it's obviously a lot quicker. You know, he's a one-man show. He's got the cart, the water. You know, you point him and he goes, right? So I've talked to him quite a bit about, you know, possibly buying our own drone, and our green surrounds are difficult to maintain, not as difficult as Jeffrey's, but you know, I was having these long conversations with him about like, all right, you know, how can we use the drone to spray our green banks, right? And then he was managing a golf course at one point, and he gave me his spray program where he had 2 fairways set aside, and he sprayed them all with the drone, those 2 with the drone, and did everything else, you know, conventionally. And, you know, a fraction of the time to spray the fairway with the drone, and no difference in spray quality for drone versus driving. So, you know, I truly believe that sooner than later, that's going to be something that's going to be, you know, an industry standard.
Have any of you guys begun looking at something like SGL, I think it's called, SGL Golf, that's doing some sort of autonomous view of turf, specifically the healthier turf where disease shows up? Have you heard of this company?
No, but there are companies that are doing that, and that's what I was talking about, these, you know, the AI for this stuff. They have machines now that'll selectively spot spray. It'll go down the fairway, but it'll spray where you have a weed. It, like, the logic in it.
So it's helping in health, not just in terms of.
And then they have these platforms like TurfRad, and there's other ones too. That's where I'm hoping the drone goes into for water management, where we communicate directly to your irrigation system and adjust your irrigation system accordingly to wetter areas and drier areas.
So, yeah, it's showing you, and, you know, obviously the more you put the equipment out, the more that it reads, the better it is, but it does have its predictive capability where if you're only going out once or twice or 3 times a week, it can calculate where you're going to be and what your needs are. I mean, the technology's amazing.
If they could do fairways and you have less point of contact on a machine, and the machine's being out there and it does it, it can start at 4:30 in the morning and be done by anybody gets to the golf course.
And your neighbors don't care, 'cause it's quiet.
It's quiet.
Hey, Rob, this guy, when you talk about fairways or anything other than athletic areas, so you talk about, weather variables, and is it different than a conventional sprayer? You don't want to spray the wind, right? But is there less tolerance with wind because you're
So,
higher?
well, he's only flying, you know, 4 to 6 feet off the ground, right? But it comes out in such a fine mist that if it's windy, you really, I think you have more tolerance with the conventional sprayers right now. I'm sure you can put some drift control and stuff in there, it may help it, but, yeah, if it's windy, he's not flying.
He stopped one day. We started last year in the morning, and he got windy by about 6:30 a.m. And he's like, "I'm going to come back later," and he came back the next day.
If you can start at 4:30, you have less
Right.
risk.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But, you know, like for both of our cases, it was herbicides, right, natural area, and, you know, he's uber, sensitive to, all right, you know, we have some fine turf here, or, you know, shrubs or trees or whatever, like, you know, he's really careful about not having, you know, drift into non-target areas.
And our hills were probably 50% inclined, some of them, where we would have to get up and do hand walking. It's just safety for the guys walking in those areas. You know, somebody would twist their ankle or you know, in the office for a couple hours. Yeah.
Any permitting issues? I'm just thinking of drones, your airspaces. and
So
things
he
that-
has to, the operator has to have an aviator license because they're bigger than the small drones. So that's, if we were to get him on our property eventually, one of us would have to have an aviator license. There are pesticide license, but that's not the applicator. They all have a pesticide license.
Yeah, and Tamarack's right next to the airport, so we've got and we're in Connecticut, so it's a totally different ballgame.
Right. Yeah, we're just thinking the same thing.
Could you use it, you think? Have you looked into that?
It's questionable, it's a big gray area right now, and to fly because we're in a certain radius of the airport itself is tricky.
And certainly that's a factor for autonomous equipment too, you know, as we go to larger equipment, as the government regulations, crossing streets, things like that, so. A lot of opportunity. I think the gentleman that asked about, you know, what's coming, well, it's changing every day, right? So I like the point that you made, Jeff, around leasing equipment, because if you have that opportunity to lease as opposed to buy, we know the technology is changing.
I think they're almost calling it a swap instead of a lease, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to get locked in at this point, right?
When we were talking to the contractor, talked to him about he had a disaster with the drone sprayer before chemicals. We talked anything about that, obviously it's much different than spraying with a traditional sprayer. Like a sprayer pump's getting clogged up or something, or, you know, the drone just taking shit in the middle of the sprayer.
Yeah, things can definitely go wrong. But you know, a lot of us have AI, GPS, self-driving spray rigs too, with you know the expertise of that machine, particularly along borders, firing off, you know, the nozzle multi-second is pretty impressive. So yeah, there's a lot of tech in a lot of different ways that we haven't discussed today, right?
It's a smaller tank and smaller carrier.
Right.
I think we're getting to the end of our time. Do we have one last question from the group? Well, I'm sure these gentlemen will be around. Go ahead.
So there was mention of robotic for the bumpers, for making bumpers. Have any of you guys seen that or tested it at all?
I'm jumping in this summer. I'm just kind of waiting for a certain product to become available. So we're going to start. I'm not sure when. I'm hoping July. But for us, that makes sense. Flat bunkers, and based on our acres of sand, we can easily justify that, right?
And
Versus the fairway thing.
And is it the same idea that goes 24/7?
I don't know what's going to happen with that. There's got to be sort of schedule around irrigation, but yeah, I would think sure going to start in the dark.
So they claim the machine that he's speaking about is like a 10-hour work battery. So I don't know if it's around the clock, but probably can get out there before play and stay in front of play, right?
Still not about the transport.
Right.
Yeah. So it's new. I don't know much about it.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy to map it, for sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, join me in thanking our panelists.